My SCBA is operational, my radio is in the correct frequency. I've just been told by my captain to throw this 24-foot ladder on a beam for ventilation against this building. So because it's a right-hand throw, I'm going to position myself on the right side of the ladder, and I'm going to kneel down at the balance point of the ladder with my back to the butt spurs. Again, using proper body mechanics, keeping my back straight and looking straight ahead, I'm going to span the beam of the ladder with my hand. I'm not going to tuck my fingers inside the beam, and I'm going to lift the ladder onto a beam against the ground. From here, with two hands on the top beam, I'm going to advance to the tip. And again, with proper body mechanics, lifting with my legs and not with my back, looking straight ahead, I'm going to lift this ladder until it's on a high shoulder, rotating 180 degrees so that I'm facing the butt spurs. From here, I'm going to advance to the balance point without skidding the butt spurs, hand over hand. What we don't want you to do is to bounce the ladder as you're advancing to the balance point. You can see that my right hand is on the balance point. In one smooth and controlled motion, I'm going to dip my body straight back, and the ladder is going to rock onto my shoulder in a high shoulder. Remember, butt spurs angled slightly down. If I were to tip the butt spurs slightly up, this ladder could extend behind me. From here, I'm going to visualize and verbalize no overhead obstructions. No overhead obstructions. 24-foot extension ladder, beam raised to the roof for ventilation. As I'm walking into my objective, I'm spotting where I want my butt spurs to be planted, the appropriate distance away from the building. In one smooth and controlled motion, I'm going to dip my body, plant the butt spurs without skidding, and raise the ladder to a vertical position. Also, footing the ladder when it's vertical. So from here, the fly section is facing the building. We throw our ladders fly in unless it's for rescue. I've looked up to make sure that I'm going to meet my objective. I don't have to pivot the beam in any direction to make sure that I'm going to meet my objective. I'm going to look up and visualize which way the halyard draws out of the pulley, which way the halyard exits the pulley, and I'm going to foot the beam opposite that. Right now I'm footing the beam that hit the ground first when I raise this ladder to a vertical position. Once I visualize it, that the halyard exits the pulley towards this beam, I have to switch feet to foot the beam opposite the halyard draw. When I reposition my feet, what you want to do is use the sole of your boot against this edge of this beam and your knee against this edge of this beam. I'm going to push with my knee against my foot, and my foot is going to prevent the ladder or the butt spurs from moving in that direction. What you see as a common pitfall for people is that they're going to wrap this beam like that with their foot actually angled on the other side of the beam, and then they're going to push against this side with their knee. But if you look, it puts my knee in an awkward position, and if this ladder were to rock away from me, or more importantly over my head, it's going to put me in jeopardy of injuring my knee. What you don't want to see is this. What we do want to see is this. Another way of controlling it, and an additional way that we want you to do it, is to grasp the halyard with your thumbs face down. If I were to grip the halyard with my thumbs facing up, you see how narrow the profile of my elbows is. I'm barely getting to touch the beams of the ladder here. So if I lose control of the ladder, I may or may not have a stable surface to contact against, as opposed to if I put my thumbs facing down like this, you can see that my elbows are wide. The most important thing to remember when you're raising an extension ladder is that you must maintain control of the halyard at all times. So if for whatever reason I'm raising this ladder and I start to lose control of it, you need to, at all times, hold on to this halyard. Do not ever let go of this halyard. Especially when you start to lose control, you don't know if the dogs are locked or not. So if I were to raise the ladder and I were to start to lose control of the ladder, all I have to do is hold on to the halyard, not let go, and lean into the ladder with my elbows nice and wide. I can push on these beams and make sure that the ladder contacts the building without losing control of the halyard. You'll notice that the dogs are unlocked but the fly section isn't moving because I'm still maintaining control of the halyard. From here, you can reset, foot the ladder properly, raise the ladder so that the butt spurs, so that the dogs are locked. Then you can reposition the ladder so that you have 4 points of contact, reset, and raise the ladder appropriately. So the ladder needs to be as vertical as possible when you're raising it. You don't want it aiming over your head. You don't want to project this ladder towards the building as you're raising it because it's going to increase your likelihood of losing control. So my ladder's in position. I have the appropriate beam footed. I'm footing it using the proper technique. I'm going to transition my hands from the beams to the halyard, and I'm going to raise the halyard. Once I start to raise the halyard, I'm going to visualize and verbalize 1, 2 dogs unlocked. And I'm going to raise the ladder to the appropriate height in a smooth and controlled motion. When I get to the top, when I get to where I want the top dogs locked at the appropriate height, I'm going to visualize and verbalize 1, 2 dogs locked. From here, I'm going to transition my hands from the halyard to the beams of the ladder. And then I'm going to transition the foot that's footing the ladder, my left foot, onto the bottom rung, as close to the center of that rung as possible. And I'm going to lower my ladder into the building, counting out 3, 2, 1 as I reach my objective. 3, 2, 1. And my ladder reaches the objective. From here, I'm going to go to the underside of the ladder, the fly section of the ladder, so that I can tie my banger. I personally like to pull the halyard through where the clip is anchored. From here, you have many different options for how long this bight of rope is to be able to tie your halyard. So to start my halyard, I'm going to move from right to left, and I'm going to bite the portion of the halyard that's coming down from up above against this rung. Make sure that this clip is straight, and make sure that you take up as much slack as possible to keep your halyard as taut as possible. So when I started my banger, I went from this bay to this bay, from right to left. It doesn't matter if you go left to right or right to left. What does matter is this second move. If I went from this bay to this bay for my initial bite, my next move is from the bay below through the opposite bay diagonally. And if you look at this when we're complete, all we're doing is tying an overhand over this rung with the halyard being captured within that overhand. Now that my banger is tied and the upper fly section is secured, I need to adjust this ladder so that I have 4 points of contact and a proper climbing angle. You'll notice that my climbing angle is a little bit steep right now. So I'm going to need to adjust the butt spurs out, utilizing the same method that we've showed you for the rest of our ladder. At the same time, I'm going to be looking up to make sure that I have 3 to 5 rungs above the roof line. The order for this ladder throw was to be thrown for ventilation, and as shown in the standards and procedures, we need a minimum of 3 to 5 rungs above the roof line for ventilation operations. So from here, I'm going to transfer one hand to the beam of the ladder, and again, when I move this ladder, I'm going to grab the second rung from the bottom, not wrapping my thumb over the top, but again, positioning my thumb underneath. The reason for that being, if something were to happen with this ladder and the fly section were to suddenly retract, when I have the rung wrapped, I could get my thumb pinched in between the retracting fly section, as opposed to having my hand underneath with my thumb tucked under the rung. It's going to potentially, hopefully, knock my hand out of the way as opposed to getting it caught in there. So again, nice wide base with my legs, not moving my feet once I lift this ladder up. I'm going to adjust the butt spurs out to my outer foot, hopefully achieving a proper climbing angle and 4 points of contact. Visualizing the tips when I move the ladder, and then checking 4 points of contact, proper climbing angle, making sure that I have 3 to 5 rungs above the roof line. Then I'm going to tell my proctor that this ladder's ready to climb. So I've just been told by my proctor to remove this ladder from the building. I have the option of removing it where the butt spurs sit, or I can bring the butt spurs closer to the building to increase my success or odds of getting this thing away from the building cleanly. I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate moving it into the building for you guys. So, nice wide base, hand positioning as we've spoke of before, spanning the beam on the beam closest to me, and then underhanded grip or tucking my thumb underneath, second rung up from the bottom. I'm going to look at the tips while I adjust the butt spurs closer to the building. This is going to be an appropriate distance for me to remove the ladder, but before I do, I have to untie my banger. Banger's untied. I move the rope out to the bed section of the ladder so that I can have control of it. The first thing I need to do is clear the tips. Tips, clear! Before I remove it from the building. I'm gonna put one foot on the bottom rung, as close to the center of that rung as possible. It's gonna make sure that both beams are evenly grounded. And I'm gonna keep the other foot firmly planted on the ground. Both hands on the beams out in front of my body. What we don't want to see people do is to lean into the ladder and rock away from the building with their foot off the ground. This foot needs to be firmly planted on the ground. When we go to remove it from the building, if you need to, you can sink down a little bit to get this away from the building, but since I've adjusted the butt spurs, it shouldn't be an issue whatsoever. Once the ladder is raised to a vertical position, I'm gonna move my foot to foot the ladder how I did when I brought it into the building. So again, with my foot and my knee putting pressure against each other, I'm gonna make sure that the butt spurs are evenly planted. I'm gonna position my hands from, or reposition my hands from the beams to the halyard, and I'm gonna lower the fly section. Remember, thumbs down with my elbows wide is gonna give me a lot of control of this ladder. First thing I'm gonna do is unlock the top dogs, and I'm gonna say 1, 2 dogs unlocked. From here, I'm gonna lower the ladder, hand over hand, until the fly section is bedded. And I'm gonna say 1, 2 dogs locked when the dogs are locked against the bed section. From here, I have 2 options. I can either take the ladder out as it sits, or I can reposition this, pivoting on the beam that I have footed to take it out to have it positioned where I want it to be. From here, I'm just gonna take it out in the direction that it is, parallel to the building. I need to clear that before I take it down though. Clear! From here, I'm gonna advance towards the balance point of the ladder with my right hand, my dominant hand. Once I get with my right hand on the balance point, I'm gonna dip my lower body, keeping my back straight, and the ladder will rock up onto my shoulder in a high shoulder orientation as I do. Clear. Hands at the balance point, big dip, ladder rocks onto my shoulder. Remember, butt spurs facing slightly down is the preferred orientation, and you're gonna need to say ladder coming around or ladder coming through as you're moving the ladder. Ladder coming around. Ladder coming around. Ladder coming through. As with the 14-foot ladder, you can dip, plant a butt spur, and pivot the ladder so that now the butt spurs are facing the objective instead of walking all the way around to have the butt spurs face the objective. From here, you're gonna advance back to the tip of the ladder, hand over hand. Once you get to the tip of the ladder, I'm now gonna rotate my body 180 degrees so that my back is facing the butt spurs. I'm gonna take control of the top beam of the ladder with both hands, and I'm gonna ground the ladder on a beam. Again, using my legs to lower and not my back, maintaining proper body positioning. From here, I'm gonna rotate to face the balance point with 2 hands on the top beam until I reach the balance point. I'm gonna turn around so that my back is facing the butt spurs. My hand is at the balance point, spanning the beam, and I'm gonna lower the ladder until it's bedded on the ground.